Welcome everybody to the latest webinar in the development and support series delivered by the Nih Academy. This webinar, Your Authentic Leadership Brand, is delivered in collaboration between the NIHR and Oakridge, one of our leadership development program partners. The webinar will be facilitated by Mark Blanchard and Clare, who are senior consultants to Oakridge, and they've got extensive experience in behavioural and cultural change and are passionate about helping people and teams to achieve their full potential. And with all of that in mind, I'll hand over to Mark and Joe now.
The webinar today is Your Leadership Brand. Just as a little bit of an opener, research tells us that people generally want to be fully engaged and committed to what they're doing. They want to feel as if their work actually matters. They want to believe in their leaders. And we're going to be talking today about authentic leadership. And authentic leaders inspire those who they lead. Because they're self-aware, they've developed an open and transparent relationship with the people around them, and they stay true to their values and behave with integrity. So developing an authentic leadership brand is key to practicing authentic leadership. So today we're going to be focused on just understanding the key principles of authentic leadership, why things like purpose, values, strengths, contribution are key to authentic leadership and for developing authentic leadership skills, and to give you some tips and techniques to further develop your own leadership brand. I'm going to reference some work by Bill George, who is the author of True North, Discover Your Authentic Leadership. So kind of what is authentic leadership? Often the title of leader or manager comes with an expectation that we place on ourselves that you need to behave like a leader. Authentic leadership is less about playing a role of a leader and more about reflecting and deepening our own self-awareness to help us be the best versions of ourselves, to enable us to engage and lead others with trust and integrity. Bill George describes the traits of an authentic leader and uses the analogy of a compass, hence the slide. And by following our own internal compass enables us to be authentic. So developing that self-awareness. What's my story? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my areas of development? What are my most deeply held values? What principles guide my leadership? And being really aware of those. Knowing what motivates you both intrinsically and extrinsically. And how do you balance those internal and external motivations? So what kind of gets me going? Have I got a great support team around me? Have I got people I can count on to guide me and support me along the way? And do I have an integrated life? How can I integrate all aspects of my life to find fulfillment? So these are the key principles of authentic leadership. So Bill George believes that by practicing authentic leadership, builds better relationships with colleagues, develop higher levels of output, greater productivity, and a more positive working environment. So here's some of the benefits on here. Authenticity is also linked to compassion. And if you're familiar with the King's Fund report written by Professor Michael West, called Caring to Change, his colleagues shared how compassionate leaders can stimulate innovation in healthcare. And if you joined us on the Compassionate and Inclusive Leadership webinar last month, then we talked a bit about this in that webinar. This is a really important aspect of leadership within the healthcare setting and a key component of the NHS leadership framework and a key priority for the NIHR. So you can see on the screen there some of the benefits. So we're going to, Joe, could you do the honors and open a poll? Which of these benefits would benefit you most and add most value to you as an authentic leader? So if you get your fingers working again on the polls, then it's a multiple choice. So tick all that apply.
That's great. It should be showing on your screen now. So
Sure
you can see those votes coming in. Okay.
A few people on today. It's about halfway there. Give it 5 more seconds. Okay.
Okay, I'll end the poll now. And there we go. So 78% of people have identified relationships with colleagues as a huge benefit. 76% trust with the team. A more positive working environment, 74%. 66% for compassionate and inclusive leadership, providing that great foundation. And 53% have indicated productivity as a benefit.
That's great. Thanks, Joe. I think we can see from that that the benefits are quite, oops, let's close that down. So there's quite a good spread of identifying where those benefits could come from. So just bear those things in mind as we go through the webinar today, but there are benefits to being an authentic leader. So what is authentic leadership? There's a quote by Polonius from Hamlet on this slide. Fundamentally, leaders they're self-aware and genuine. They're self-actualized individuals who are aware of their strengths, their limitations, and their emotions. They also show their real selves to their people. They don't act in that, you know, they act in one way in private and then one way in public. They really are genuine there. Key characteristic is that not hiding mistakes, being really open about when they make a mistake and being honest about that. You know, lack of not really feeling that it's a weakness, it's actually a strength to share those things. And they also realize that being self-actualized is a journey. It's not the end goal of being self-actualized, actually it's the journey of being an authentic leader. Authentic leaders are mission-driven and focused on results. They're able to put the mission and the goals of the organization ahead of their own interests. So authentic leaders are the ones that are not going for it's not ego driving them or increasing their power base or doing things for more money. It's in pursuit of the common purpose and the goal of maybe the research project is that's what they're focused on. And authentic leaders tend to lead by their heart, not just their minds. They're not afraid to share their emotions, as I've described already, not afraid to share their vulnerability in order to be able to connect with their people. However, just a caveat, this doesn't mean authentic leaders are soft. That could be a perception for people around, is that if you're an authentic leader, you're quite soft and kind of can be easily manipulated. In fact, what we find is authentic leaders, as they communicate in this direct manner, they're able to communicate more directly and have those difficult conversations. The interaction with people around them is that the strong empathy that they show as well means they connect really well. So directness without empathy is cruel. Directness with empathy is authentic leadership. So we'll have another poll now. Joe, if you can do the honors. So which of these aspects of authentic leadership do you, on reflection, which ones do you find most challenging? And again, multiple choice. So which of these do you find most challenging? And the votes are flying in.
Okay, we've got pretty much 80% response. I'll end the poll now and share the results. So you should see those on the screen. And again, we can see those, the most challenging one is that deep self-awareness, maybe taking time to focus on developing our deep self-awareness. Open and transparent relationships, that's number 2 on the list. Staying true to values and behaving with integrity. So really taking some time out to focus on ourselves and building those relationships can often be the most challenging.
That's great. Thanks, Joe. And close that one down. Okay. So exploring the self-awareness, so that came up quite high up the list. The top one there of, you know, something that's most challenging is actually having that deep self-awareness. It's a central theme of Bill George's work as well, and using the analogy of an iceberg, which that we find really useful to do here. That deep self-awareness is, tip of the iceberg stuff is the things that people see, so our external behaviors. But that's been driven by lots of different internal and subconscious activity, which is basically the rest of the iceberg below the waterline. So the internal and subconscious activities developed through a mixture of the nature stuff, so our genetic blueprint, our personalities, and also nurture. So our personal experiences, the environment we've grown up in, our education, the people that we socialize with and we're around the most, the media that the news that we watch, the media and information channels that we tap into. So by understanding ourselves deeper, we can start to notice how our own behavior might be driving that stuff above the waterline and enabling us to make conscious decisions to adapt and connect better with others. It also helps us consider the behaviors of others and why they may be acting in the way they're acting. So that authentic leadership is not just being self-aware, but also being able to tap into and with empathy, understand where the other person's coming from. So being able to step into their shoes. So if we want to develop our own authentic leadership brand, then we need to dig deep and think about ourselves at a much deeper level. Think about your purpose, your core values, your strengths and contribution to help identify the kind of leader you want to be. So I'll now hand over to Joe, and Joe's going to explore these concepts further.
Thanks, Mark. So to help us consider what kind of authentic leader we are or we aspire to be, we can use a simple brand framework to develop that clear view of our own authenticity. And again, it really helps us deep dive into that self-awareness. So if we look at our brand framework, we can see that the framework is made up of the purpose. If we think about the top level, the reason why we do what we do, what is it that makes us do the work that we want to do and lead the people we want to lead? We think about contribution, the value we want to contribute, not only from an organizational perspective, but why would others want to follow us? Then we think about our strengths. What are our standout strengths, skills and experience that motivate and energize us? And our core values at the base of that pyramid, the core values, attitudes and beliefs that guide us. And so we'll take a look at each of these layers of the pyramid in turn, and I'll introduce you to an activity to help you identify what would you like to capture for that particular layer, with the aim of building your overall authentic leadership brand. And in the words of Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, we're going to start with the end in mind. So we're going to go straight to the top of the pyramid and look at purpose first. So if we start with purpose, why we do what we do purposefully. So if we think about that purpose, we are connecting with a deep source of motivation within ourselves. It's, as I said, the thing that really motivates you about your work, the thing that you love to do in spite of your reward. It's the thing that keeps you going when times get tough. And if we know why we do what we do, we can improve our capacity to make impact. It can help us connect with other people across cultures and contexts on a deeper level. We can feel energized, motivated, expanded when we have that sense of purpose. It gives us a real sense of satisfaction. If we tend to have a calling to our work, we tend to be more satisfied than those of us that think of our work as just a job. It can help us overcome obstacles that get in our way and keep that momentum through challenging times. And if we know our purpose and keep it front of mind, we can keep that focus on what's important to us. So we'd like to hear from you now, knowing your purpose. What benefits bring most value to you personally, if knowing your purpose? Mark, can you launch the poll, please?
Poll is launched.
So what benefit do you think you'd get most from if you were able to identify your purpose?
It's great, the votes are coming in. Okay, about just over half.
Just interested, Mark, how does knowing your purpose help you in your work?
It was interesting when the polling opened that motivation kind of shot right up, and it's kind of teared back a bit here now. But for me, it motivates me. It's that feeling of satisfaction that what I'm doing has meaning, is valuable to someone, including myself. So, you know, without the purpose, then I find it really difficult to find the energy to be motivated to do the task.
Yeah, I think it's been really helpful for me over the last year around resilience. Yeah, so really keeping me going when things have been a bit challenging and tough.
Okay, let's share the results. Thank you very much, everybody. So yeah, the motivation from here is just, you know, slightly ahead on that. But yeah, if you don't know what it is, you know, what the purpose of the task or the job or the team you're working in, or what you're trying to achieve, it's really difficult to get motivated. And then a couple of other things which have high voting, so that satisfaction, so the feeling of satisfaction, really important to have purpose there, and knowing you got the impact. So yeah, it's kind of, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. If I don't feel that I have that impact on it and it's meaningful, then it's really difficult to get stuff done.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, just stop the results. There we go.
Okay. So one of the activities we can use around our purpose is the Ikigai Model. And this is based on a Japanese concept, roughly translated as a reason for being. And according to a study by Michiko Kumano from Osaka Otani University, Ikigai is described as the feeling of accomplishment and fulfillment that follows when people pursue their passions. And the exercise asks you to focus on 4 questions to identify your purpose. What is it that you love to do? What did you want to do, think about, love doing when you were a child? What activities do you do in your spare time that make you happy? And what do you love to do at work? What are you great at? What's your expertise, your skills and strengths? What do people ask you for help for? What is it that the world needs from you? What or who inspires you? What could cause you to feel angry or frustrated? What can you offer to others? And what are you paid for? What contribution at work do you want to make? What are you proud of? What more could you contribute? So by really thinking about these questions holistically and noting down our answers, what we can do is look at those responses and try and identify the overlaps. And where those overlaps occur are the sweet spot, if you like, that ikigai moment, that purpose. So maybe take some time out after this webinar to have a think through some of those questions and see where you can find your ikigai. And this is the top of our pyramid. Now we're going to focus on the base of our pyramid, values, and we're going to move up through the pyramid, connecting back into purpose. And so values are things that are important to us, what we place importance on. And most of us have 3 to 5 core values that identify us as at our core. Meg Selig, an author and psychologist, describes personal core values as the fundamental beliefs of a person, the guiding principles that dictate behaviour and can help people understand the difference between right and wrong. And so we think of our values as those anchors that ground us. And a real common way of identifying your values is through a sorting exercise. You would go through cards or look at a list of values and narrow them down, for example. First of all, we might look at identifying a larger number and then make it smaller and smaller until we've got to those core values. A really quick and easy way, however, to think about our values is, what do we find most important to others? What are the qualities and values that we admire in others and appreciate in others? And secondly, what annoys you about other people? What's the thing that really gets on your nerves? And these are the things that you are likely to place most importance on. So just sharing our next slide, and we've got a selection of words here that represent values. And some words might be jumping right out at you, others maybe not registering at all. And it might be that you need to take some more time to think about this. So again, getting a copy of the slides or watching the video might be useful again, and pausing at this stage to give it some more time. But just thinking about your values, Mark, what's jumping out at you?
For me, things like honesty, integrity, contribution are kind of my guiding values of everything I do.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we often pick out words that are similar. For me, trust, integrity is an important value for me, making a difference. So they kind of sound quite similar. But of course, the thing about values is they're so personal that even though they may sound similar, they're going to be very unique in terms of the way they are demonstrated in our daily actions and language. Yeah. And so all of this is a result of our personality makeup, our genetic blueprint, our lived experiences, how we grew up, study, start work. So what we attach to those values is very personal. So next, let's have a look at strengths. And strengths here, I have to declare a real passion for this element. I love working with strengths. I love helping people to work with their strengths. And the reason is that for that is a personal experience of mine where it took me a while to work out really what my strengths were and be able to find a role that I could use my strengths in. And that kept me so much more satisfied and motivated. And put simply, strengths are underlying qualities that energize us, we're great at, or we have that potential to be great at. And if I know my strengths and have the opportunity to work with them, I'm going to be much more energized, much more competent. Things will come easier. Because things come easier, I'm going to feel confident, energized, and motivated and feel good working with my strengths. And of course, it will help me feel authentic as I'm working with my innate preferences, the things that really drive me and motivate me. And you can see from this model here from StrengthScope, if we know our organizational goals, our research goals, our department goals, we have the right skills and knowledge, we can really supercharge that productive performance through our strengths and our energizers. Okay. Now, strengths are different to competencies. We can learn our skills and knowledge, and we can learn competencies. The difference between the strengths and the competencies are it's the energizing quality. It's the thing that drives us. It's the thing that gets us out of bed in the morning when we're feeling a little bit tired. So when we're working with our strengths, we're often working in flow. We lose track of time. We feel like we've had a really good day. Again, Mark, just sharing some of your strengths and how they show up in work. What happens for you?
A couple of my strong ones would be about collaboration, which I, on reflection, is a core of everything that I do and everything I've done through my career. So collaboration as a core strength for myself, as well as empathy, which is probably why I've ended up doing what I'm doing, is putting myself into other people's shoes, and that enables me to do what I do. Yeah. And I find that those two strengths really complement each other. Yeah, great. I think on the flip side, the areas which probably aren't strengths are things like controlling my emotions. Is I tend to wear my heart on my sleeve, which means I can be really open, but I've just got to kind of measure that sometimes. Is I've just got to take a step back before I react. So I'm just, that self-awareness is I'm also conscious of my foibles as well as my strengths. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, so how do we go about working out our strengths? How do we really focus on that? And again, we've got a series of reflective questions for you to have a look at to help you identify when you're performing at your best. So if we look at the next slide, we can see here, how am I going to identify those aspects that really energize me? What's inspired us, what's been a particular highlight, and what are those strengths and positive qualities you're known for by your immediate family, your close friends, and your work colleagues. You can choose to take some strength profiles. There's quite a few online assessments available online too, that might help you give some more insight into this. Okay, so let's now look at our next level. This is contribution. So what is the aspect of contribution I want to make to the organisation, my research, my team? And why would others want to follow me? Why would others want to be led by me? And one of the ways of working this out, we suggest, is through a visioning exercise. So again, we're probably not going to have time to go into this in detail, but let me introduce it to you and you can practice it later. So first of all, we know that visioning is a really helpful way to set goals. And often we have sports people, sports performers using visioning to help them imagine themselves crossing the winning line, scoring the goal, the applause from the crowd, holding up the trophy. And we know that this visioning can help bring clarity to that goal and motivation to that goal. So not maybe quite as obvious for us when we're leaders and contributors. Maybe as researchers it's a little bit more obvious, but maybe as leaders and contributors in more general roles, not quite. So we've created a short scenario for you to help you articulate your contribution. And what we suggest you do is imagine that you've been nominated for a leadership award as the leader of a complex and successful project. And we're going to suggest a number of questions in this scenario. So grab the biggest piece of paper you can find to make lots of notes, and make sure you find a quiet space where you won't be disturbed to start with, and then get yourself into a nice state where you feel calm and comfortable. Maybe close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and then work through some of these questions. So you've been nominated as a leader of a complex and successful work project, and it's an outstanding piece of work. It could have been a groundbreaking piece of research, a fantastic partnership collaboration with a health sector, charity sector or industry, or a really significant project that's contributed to the success of NIHR and its mission. Your close colleague and trusted mentor, somebody who really knows you well, loves to work with you and respects you, is going to make a speech about you and your leadership style and your contribution to the organisation. So imagine how you're feeling as the colleague is approaching the stage to talk about you and present you with your award. What would you like to hear your mentor say about you? What would you like to hear, see and feel about your work, about your contribution to the team and the wider organisation, about your leadership style? And finally, what would you like others to say about you after the event? Yeah. And if we think through some of these questions and we answer them fully, again, we can use our notes to inspire us to develop a paraphrase or a sentence that sums up your contribution for your pyramid. Okay, so we've completed each layer now. And once you've completed all of the exercises, you will have identified your 3 core values, about 3 to 5 standout strengths, a paragraph or a couple of sentences about your contribution, and then going back to purpose where we started, a paragraph or a couple of sentences about your purpose. And if you capture it on one document, you can reflect on it, check how the layers feed into each other, what links you can see, the golden threads right through from value, strengths, contribution to purpose. And once you've done it, we recommend that you share it with somebody you trust, maybe a trusted colleague or a close friend, somebody who knows you best, to get their honest feedback. How does it feel for them? Is it representative of you, of how they see you? What's missing, if anything? Yeah, really focus on getting some really nice quality feedback on your authentic leadership brand. And so once you've put all this effort in, what will you do with it? Well, there's lots of activity that we can use to help us as leaders to be able to make sure that we're making the most of the work that we've done. First of all, we can have it visibly and accessible so that when we've got some of those doubts and challenges, we just want a reaffirming reminder that we're on the right track. We can look at it and reflect on it. It can help us identify what we want to be known for when we're collaborating with others, when we're networking. It can help us plan and progress our careers by focusing on what we're aspiring to be. And we can use it, as I said, as that reminder when things go tough to keep our energy and motivation levels up. Also, we'd recommend you share it with your team, share more about yourself, what they can expect from you, and ask for their feedback too. Is that what they're seeing? And enable and encourage the team to complete their authentic brands. It may not be based around leadership, it may be around contribution. But by sharing each other's values, purpose, strengths, and contribution, it will help us all show up authentically. It'll deepen all of our self-awareness and the awareness of each other to interact much more effectively. And importantly, it will help you build an inclusive and compassionate leadership style, because when we know each other at that deeper level, we can appreciate and value each other's unique strengths and contribution and act more compassionately when we're facing challenges, either individually or as a team. Okay. We need to think about how we're going to communicate as leaders, communicate our leadership brand. How can we share those messages so that we can build trust and develop those great working relationships and deliver successful collective results? We want to make sure that what we're saying is simple. It has some common themes in memorable words. We want to make sure it's consistent. So we're delivering a consistent message about who we are. And we want to make sure we're clear so that our leadership brand is understandable and resonates with others. Okay. So hopefully we've stimulated some of your thinking today about the kind of leader you are or aspire to be. And it's safe to say you'll probably need to put lots more thought into some of those activities that we've introduced to really help you with that thinking. And also, it's important to note that it's kind of a living activity. It never stops. So we might want to revisit our brand from time to time as we develop and as we grow. So to help you on with your journey of self-discovery, we've identified a number of resources that might be useful for you, some books and maybe some TED Talks that might be useful. And of course, what we'd really love to talk to you about is the Nih Academy, where we've launched some modular online resources for leaders, which again includes a module on authentic leadership, so you can go into this activity in much more detail. So we'd love to hear from you. I can see we've got some questions coming through the Q&A. So I'll conclude now and hand over to Craig to help us through the Q&A session.
Thank you, Jo. Thank you, Mark, for that really interesting presentation. And as Jo just said, we're going to move on to the Q&A. We've got several questions that have come through, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top for those that have been most what we call upvoted, and hopefully we'll get the answers that you want. So the first question we've got is, how do we help people to see that developing self-awareness is important for leadership? People dismiss feedback or do not place value on it, and also people giving feedback to support staff development often give poor feedback themselves.
So this is really an important aspect in terms of that self-awareness. Feedback is critical because what we might be perceiving is completely different to what somebody else might be experiencing. And the best way to create an environment of feedback is to ask for it first. Yeah, so if we ask for it first, then when we're having to give it to others who perhaps we want to help and improve, then they're more likely to accept it. We always want to give it with positive intent, to explain why we're giving this feedback. It's about helping and improving people. And there's a great module on NIHR Learn around turning those challenging conversations into courageous and compelling conversations too. Anything to add, Mark?
No, I think you covered that well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next question, how do you challenge somebody who isn't authentic?
So this is perhaps quite difficult because you're potentially tapping into somebody's unconscious awareness. So again, with care and empathy, asking questions, maybe trying to use questioning to surface thinking. So if it's somebody that's perhaps reporting into you, asking questions about how might they do something differently that might give a better outcome, what would they do differently? If it's somebody that you are challenging that perhaps is a peer or more senior, again, it's about having the confidence to ask some questions to think about that outcome. So perhaps if it's someone more senior, you might phrase it as, perhaps if we try to do it like this, would this give a better outcome? So we're linking the idea and the suggestion to the outcome that we want.
Lovely. Thank you. Mark, did you have anything to add for that?
The only build that, and I think it connects a bit to the previous question as well, is that, remember, the iceberg is that what you're seeing is a behavior which is showing is not authentic, and there are models, there are approaches to being able to call out that behavior in a skillful way. So it's not pointing the finger, it's not blaming, but actually you're identifying the behavior which the other person may not be aware of. So kind of just to build on Joe's answer there.
Thank you both. So the next question is it always good to show emotion or be vulnerable, and how can you minimize this or pitch it appropriately?
I think from my, just find the question to come to the top. Imagine you're interacting with someone, and everybody's probably got an example of where they're trying to work with someone who doesn't show any emotions whatsoever, and it's really difficult to read those people. It's really difficult to read whether they're motivated, whether they're passionate, and then flip that to those people who you're around who are really passionate, really driven. And I think it's having that self-awareness, but you're actually managing your energy as well. So I would say you should show your emotion, and you should show vulnerability, because that's the core essence of great collaboration, great teamwork, and also authentic leadership. But you're not just putting it out there and then hoping it's actually being measured in that, and being in control of the emotions in a positive way rather than a negative way. Understand what the impact's going to be of that as well on the other people.
Yeah. Joe, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's, some people may be worrying that they're showing too much emotion and too much vulnerability. And we do, as leaders, have to take that into account. If we are feeling particularly bad, or there's some challenges that we're having to face, we do need to create that sense of confidence for our team. So it's about not showing your vulnerability. It's about being careful, I think, and taking care and attention. What is it that's going to be most helpful? If you're having a bad day, it's okay to say we're having a bad day, and actually let's talk about something to make us feel better. But actually, we might not want to be sharing too much that would create a sense of concern for our teams.
Thank you. So this next question is quite a good one. How do you inspire unmotivated people or colleagues who do not want to change their ways?
Yeah, this is always the challenge, isn't it? And again, it's perhaps about it's getting into that values and contribution aspect of the brand, if you like. So really tapping into what is that intrinsic motivation? What is the bit of the job that you really love to do and you want to do even more of? Because there will be some intrinsic motivation somewhere inside. Sometimes it just takes a little bit more time to discover it and get into it. And once we tap into it and we find out what is really, really important for that person, it's then about how do we build that in to their development plan or their way of working, what their current tasks and responsibilities are.
Okay, thank you. Mark, anything to add there?
Yeah, and consider if people are familiar with the work by Dan Pink around intrinsic motivation, so purpose, autonomy, mastery. So if someone around you feels it looks like they're unmotivated, then understanding from them what is their purpose, autonomy, mastery, where are they on those particular dimensions, and it could be that, you know, identifying, you know, working with them to find out what is it. Is it the fact that you don't know the purpose of this thing, which might just need some clear communication of that? Do they have the skills to do it? Do they have a sense that they have autonomy to crack on and do what they're being paid to do or tasked to do? And that might be a way of changing an unmotivated into a motivated by understanding those.
Thank you. So the next question is authenticity always a positive thing? I've known some authentic, i.e. true to themselves, but also not very effective or kind leaders.
Yeah, so I think the definition we're using of authentic leadership is not just about being true to yourself, but also in the spirit of being and contributing and helping others. So it goes wider. And for what we see is that it's the basis for then us to use our empathy and compassion to work more effectively with others. And I think by undertaking some self-development to really understand our authenticity, we want to be doing that with an open mind, that we are going to potentially get some feedback that might be quite challenging. You know, it might not be what we want to hear, but in the spirit of true authenticity, we want to take that feedback on board and we want to be able to adapt to it. So I think there's an element of going into this this kind of area of leadership with an open mind in the spirit of being the best we can be and the best we can be to help others, as opposed to this is me and what you see is what you get, and you know, you're going to have to kind of like it or lump it. Yeah.
Mark?
Sorry.
No bills from me.
No. Okay. What's the major difference between transformational leadership and authentic leadership? Because it can be seen as quite similar.
Yeah, so I'm thinking back to my theory of leadership and the timelines along. So I think transformational leadership and authentic leadership, the way I would say there's a slight difference is it's this aspect of self-awareness and being the best you can be. From a transformational perspective, what we may be expecting there is we've got a competency, a leadership competency. This is what we expect of our leaders, and we're trying to develop ourselves into that leadership mold. You know, as Mark opened the session with, sometimes we expect that we have to behave in a particular way to be a leader. So what we're talking about with authentic is, this is you, this is your authentic leadership brand, this is the leader you want to be, and combine it with what is expected within the organization. But it's you and using the best of you to be the better leader that you can be, as opposed to a role or a set of competencies that you're trying to develop towards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, and so the next question, what strengths assessment tools would you recommend?
So there's quite a few profiles. Some of them you will have to pay for, some of them are free. The profiles I'm familiar with and could recommend is StrengthScope is an excellent tool. It's been approved by the BPS. The Strengths Profile is also a great tool, and it's not, the basic profile isn't that expensive. There is also a free profile via Strengths Assessment, and that I can't vouch for its robustness, but it has been useful for people that I have worked with that have used that profile. So they would be my three: StrengthScope, Strengths Profile, and via, depending on how you pronounce it, Strengths Character Assessment. Do you know of any more, Mark?
No, I'll defer to you for the strengths tools.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Joe. So the next question, how do you strike a balance between being a friendly and approachable leader whilst also being assertive?
Yeah, I love. Oh, sorry, go on, Mark.
I was just going to think that we talked today about if you're having that conversation without empathy, it can come across as being combative and points to fingers and blame. I think it might be a misnomer that you can actually be assertive, friendly, and approachable at the same time. It's just how you come across. We talk about authentic leadership. It's about being open with what might be on your mind and what you want to try and achieve with the other person. Demonstrating empathy by putting yourself in the other person's shoes, then actually it's not an either or. You're not being assertive or you're being friendly. Actually, you can be friendly and approachable and assertive at the same time if you kind of got the authentic leadership and you're role modeling authentic leadership.
Yeah, and I always come back to a statement that I picked up from Brene Brown. So for anyone that's familiar with the work of Brene Brown, she has written quite a lot of books and done TED Talks, but she talks about in her book, one of her leadership books, she talks about being kind is being clear. So clarity is kindness. So when you're being friendly and approachable, and you have to be assertive, if you keep in mind that the reason I'm being assertive is because I'm being kind, because clarity is kindness. And we think then about assertiveness in a very different way. We're not tipping into that kind of directiveness. We're thinking about it much more around giving some clarity, and that's kind to people so they know what they need to be achieving and how they want to achieve it.
Thank you both. Just before I go into the next question, I just want to draw the attention of our attendees to the chat, and you'll find a link in there which will take you to the evaluation, where you can also request the slides from today. So the next question, and I quite like this one. So how does authentic leadership fit into the question as to whether leaders are born or made? And can someone who doesn't have the approach really be coached to demonstrate this?
There is so the answer is yes. I think we talked today that there's a nurture and there's a nature piece. So there are some things that are kind of hardwired into us, how we're brought up, our experiences, the people we've associated with, how we've been educated. All of these shapes into who we are. I think that the thing with the authentic leadership is that you can pull out the various dimensions of what it is to be an authentic leader and actually develop those. So identify the areas that you're already strong, the areas where you've got developmental needs or you may be weaker, and then there are ways of bridging specific gaps in there. So things like developing your emotional intelligence, you can develop that. You can improve your self-awareness. So you can go from being completely non-self-aware to being self-aware by utilizing certain techniques and personal development solutions there. Yeah. So I think if you're not naturally an authentic leader, you can develop that by taking that approach. Any build?
Again, my belief is that everyone's got the potential to do what they want to do with effort, energy, and a growth mindset. And for me, leadership isn't necessarily a role or a title, it's a way of being. So depending on our own natural, innate values, strengths, all of that good stuff we've talked about today. And if we aspire and want to be a leader, how can we use that to the best of our ability?
Thank you both. So I'm just going to read this question because it's come through, and I think I'm going to get this right. But as a junior member of staff in an organisation, can we demand authenticity in the senior leadership? What do we do when our feedback is being neglected?
So that's quite a challenging situation to be in. And again, I think, as individuals, we can't expect people to change. We can't control how other people react and act. What we can do is try and influence that. So if we're doing that in the spirit of helping them and helping them understand, if they're choosing not to act on it, that's kind of something that's a bit outside of our control. All we can do is be true to ourselves and know that we're doing as much as we can to help the situation. So I'm not sure if that really helps, but I think if it's not working for you, you need to think about, well, what would work for you? What would you want to see? And how can you convey that in a way that is supportive, is given with positive intent to unearth some thinking around it? But we can't expect that people are just going to change just because we say that. That kind of is outside of our control to some extent. Anything you wanted to add there, Mark?
No, I think it builds on what we said about giving. You can't make someone authentic, but you can skillfully raise and identify the behaviours, which I think that's what you've said before anyway. But it is a really difficult. You can only do what you can do, and if hand on heart afterwards you can go, I've done all I can. You can't change the other person, but if you've done everything you can, then feeling that you've done that.
Okay, thank you both. So here's a challenging question for you both, asking you to draw on your own experience and skill set. So can this panel share their leadership brand with us? And if you were our leader, how would you share that with us?
Okay.
Do you want to go first, Craig?
Yeah, I can.
I defer to your expertise, Mark.
I can remember, hopefully, my leadership brand, because we've done this as a team and we've worked through this. So effectively, if I think I'm going to give you highlights, not detail, but in terms of my values, it's integrity, it's honesty, and it's making a difference. Yeah, is a real value for me. I want to help people. I want to support people. I want to help them grow. So if I then think about my strengths, it's empathy, it's relationship building, it's compassion, it's all of the things that you would expect somebody who loves to work with people to have, which was reassuring for me. Then if I think about my contribution is giving people the insights, the opportunities, the thinking time, the thinking space, the tools and techniques to help them be the best they can be. Yeah, so really helping them to be as productive and as satisfied in their work as they possibly can be. And if I think then to my purpose, it's about making a difference to people's lives. So you can kind of see that thread. So that's a piece of work that I did maybe, I don't know, 18 months ago. And we, as a team, we all did it individually. And then we shared them. It was in the good old days where we could all be in the same room and we put them up on the wall and we shared them. Obviously, we can do that maybe in a virtual space now, or wait and do it when we are back in the room, hopefully not too far off. And we basically walked around each of our leadership brands and we said, yeah, that feels right. Actually, Joe or Mark or, Craig, we might see this of you. We might see this hasn't come out. And we kind of gave feedback on each other's brands and then we kind of took them away. And it's really helped because we've got to know each other at a much deeper level. And it helps us when we're thinking about how we're going to work together. So if I've got a particular project coming along, I think, well, I know I can remember Kath's value of, whatever that value or that particular strength or skill that would be appropriate to include. So I might suggest collaborating with her on that. So it was a really useful exercise, but I do think it's a point in time, and it's not, this is it. It's a journey. You can go on it. You can work with that in more detail. You can revise it and recap. And of course, teams change all the time too. So it's how do we bring people then into that space of awareness.
Lovely, thank you. Mark, I don't know if you had anything to add to that. I'm just aware of the time and we've still probably got about 5 or 6 questions to go through.
Yeah, what I'd just say, it's not unusual that when you come across people like myself and Joe who kind of have chosen to work together within a consultancy, actually, as Joe was going through her brand, I was thinking the same words in my mind. So in terms of the values of contribution, my ultimate purpose is to help people make better decisions. So the purpose can kind of change, but actually the values underpinning that, for myself and Joe, they're really, really, really similar, which is a bit scary.
Thank you both for that. So what's your opinion on personality questionnaires such as the MBTI and Belbin?
I think they're great. I think most of them have got really good robustness behind them. If they've been approved by the BPS, then you've got a seal of approval there. I think they're not the be all and end all. Yeah, they're not always totally accurate, but they give us a theme and a pattern to work through. And if it's enough that it starts us thinking, even if we don't fully agree with it, we can get something from it because we're starting that thinking.
Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, so for me, it's part of the picture. It's not the picture. It's data and information which you need to interpret and contextualize. But really, really helpful to anchor on something. It's a start for 10, which is really useful.
Brilliant, thank you. How do you describe change variety as a value?
So that would be understanding that actually what's important to me is to experience change, is to experience new experiences, if that makes sense. I'm not craving stability within my life. I perhaps want lots more opportunity to do different things. And that's a real important aspect to me. Does that help?
Yeah. Mark?
No bills from me.
No. Okay. So another good one. How do we encourage self-awareness in people that are not at all self-aware?
It comes back to feedback.
Feedback. So it's exactly the same as I said before, is that you'll spot a behavior and it's a way of identifying that behavior, the impact of that behavior on you, and then that gives the other person a chance to recognize something they may not have recognized.
And I suppose it's picking up that whole two-way of feedback and setting that environment, isn't it, at that point? So
definitely, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So we're down to the last 3 questions. So when you're being asked about leadership or what leadership style you have, is it okay to say authentic leadership if you think that it's true on the whole, even though you probably tap into many different styles depending on the situation?
So it's interesting because I guess what authentic leadership does is it gives you that foundation. And as we know, as we become more effective leaders and more experienced leaders, we might have to adapt our behavior to get the best out of others. So I think what Emma is saying in this question is that okay? And absolutely, it's about having that foundational authenticity. So we're staying true to ourselves, but we're being the best we can be by adapting and adjusting our behavior to help others be even better.
Lovely. Mark, would you agree with that?
I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. 2 more. So have we moved away from traditional models of leadership to give way to leadership based on values now?
I think that this links in a little bit to the previous question. I think they're very different. It's about doing that leadership authentically. So the authentic piece is the being, but you'll have different ways of doing things in different contexts. It's just being authentic in what you do, and the authenticity is based on your values.
Yeah, we often talk about the traditional kind of leader, the hero leader that swooped in to save the day and sort everybody out and look after everybody. It's kind of gone now. It's about collaboration and getting the best out of everybody, and really understanding what makes people tick and what makes people thrive at work, and knowing that for yourself, and of course then helping others discover that and working collaboratively in that service of the collective goal.
Yeah, brilliant. And finally, how do you describe your weakness? And this is a question for you 2 guys.
Not you, Craig.
Not me, no.
I've already said mine.
Yeah,
Emotion, the emotion stuff is is an area that I need to work on. Is that I'm quite reactionary to things. So what I need to do is I give myself time to pause. I don't immediately react to things. I give things time to settle. That's one of my key weaknesses. I wear my heart on my sleeve.
Yeah. So I talk about weaknesses as performance risks. Yeah. First of all, I don't call them weaknesses. I call them performance risks. And I think about what performance risks do I have, and are they critical to the success of me and my role? And an example I would give here is detail consciousness. So I have not got a great attention to detail. And so the bits I love about my role are doing these kind of things, workshops, coaching, interacting with people. If I have to sit down and design a piece of work, it's not that I can't do it. I can do it. I've learned to do it, and I've learned to do it quite well, hopefully. But I just have to put more energy and effort into it. And I know that about myself. So I have to be really disciplined when I've got a design piece of work to do, as opposed to an activity, a learning activity. So it's recognizing the bits that perhaps you need to put more effort and energy in, knowing that you can do it, but it's just going to take a lot more oomph to get it done.
Thank you. So that brings us to the end of the Q&A. Thanks again to Mark and Joe for a really interesting presentation, and thank you everybody for submitting interesting questions that have challenged us to provide you, and I hope the answers will help. I hope everyone feels that they've actually benefited from attending and they're able to use some of these learnings going forward.